They came from the shipping lanes. They broke through the Lorgus jump gate and took everything within 6 weeks. The planetary defences did some damage, but not much. And the PDF put up the best fight they could. But it wasn't enough. I don't say that to slight them, let's be clear. My uncle was the High Lord of Hive Gallant. He saw what was happening and he enacted lockdown protocols. The entire population was on rations within the week. That was hard. Harder than I can say. At night, the ships could be seen fighting in the skies of Talon 3. 2 weeks after Talon was pacified, they came from my home world, Rafa. The fighting took a month in standard time. I was 19 when they broke through orbital defences and landed on the world. The ships were like nothing I had ever seen. They had these huge, fleshy ships that were laced with iron and machinery. Those ships could be heard howling as they delivered them on world. The order was clear. Surrender, in full. Lay down your weapons, or your city will be sieged and taken. It went out over the Vox. Every single Vox caster in the Hive. People were instantly divided. And I think that was the point. They wanted us to fight each other. My uncle was shaking when he sent the arbitrators in to stop the riots. The shelling started after that. It wasn't aimed at anything valuable. They just fired to scare people, to keep them awake. I think they enjoyed the fear, the idea of stopping sleep. The siege, for what it was, ground on until they simply detonated the walls using tanks. When they rolled into the city, the entirety of the PDF was killed. People I'd known my entire life just gone. Their leader, Seren Sarex, walked through the streets alone. I watched it on a Vox feed, his massive spiked armour, his cloak and those damned stripes on his shoulder. My uncle feared more death, so he offered a simple trade. Himself for no more civilian deaths. Sarex walked all the way to the top of the Hive by himself and opened the doors to my uncle's hall himself. No servants, no slaves. He wanted my uncle and, well, all of us to think he had respect. He didn't. My uncle had all of us hired and was alone in the hall. He left with Sarex. We all watched him leave the city on foot, next to that traitor rat. When they walked out the front gates, Sarex grabbed my uncle and threw him into the jaws of what they call a forge fiend. He laughed, and the rest of the Iron Warriors followed. I was 19. That was 35 years ago. The Hive was mostly levelled and turned into a slave factory. We lost tens of thousands of people a month. There were 40 million people in Hive Gallant. We had half a litre of water a day and a sort of protein sludge. I don't want to know where it came from. A lot of people got ill. The fumes and the toxins, the radiation, the warp taint. It all adds up. They had most of us making components for armoured vehicles. They did not trust us, however, so no one really knew what anyone else was working on. The best of the Hive were taken off-world to the ships that had anchored in orbit. Their anchors were dropped into the oceans, and they burned 1 million gallons of water a week. One of the slaves that came with them told me that it was to cool the demon chains that kept the engines working on the ships. Sarex had all the Vox screens hacked by his tech priest, and those screens showed my uncle being eaten by that forge fiend over and over and over again. After a year, it stopped making people shudder. After 5, they changed the feed. We tried our best to tamper with what we could here and there. A lot of people got caught. They didn't care. We'd all accepted our fate. That didn't stop people from praying in secret. In our minds. You see, that's where they can't get you. In your head, in that deep part of your consciousness. That's what you have to believe in. I was 53 when Sarex was overthrown by Valthrix. He had been an Iron Warrior. He was there on the front lines outside the city when my uncle... he was there. He had an amulet that hurt to look at. One day he started arguing with Serix, and Serix just grabbed the amulet and it blew his arm off. Valthrix was the demon that was inside the amulet. The marine he took over was a warpsmith named Ornos. By that point, the oceans were pretty much gone. So were most of the people, but the factories, they worked day and night. They took everyone in system and brought them to my uncle's hive to work. One of the administratum clerks, a woman named Celia, had spent 30 years stealing these small lengths of wire, a few pieces of metal here and there. I had no idea if she knew it'd work, but she tried. Her rebellion had been 30 years in the making. When she flipped the switch, a distress call was sent out. She used the entire factory as a signal booster. She was impaled on the antenna and left there. We figured no one heard. We were wrong in the end. I didn't count how many things we made. I didn't care. I took immense pleasure in using a file to weaken a strut here, a bolt there. I like to think that some Iron Warrior will one day pull a trigger only to have his weapon explode. Maybe he'll hear my laughter too. I hope so. 3,000 of us were going to fetch scrap outside the city when Valthrix's ship, Black Claw, exploded in orbit. It spun end over end and fragmented before it crashed where our oceans had been. There used to be a festival held on that clean water. We used to build these floating docks. Anyway, we broke those up for firewood after 5 months. Funny. The things you remember. Valthrix was furious and demanded answers. Thousands were questioned, and no one knew anything. They weren't lying. We didn't. 4 days later, that living ship thing, that exploded too. That was worse because the sound was in your head. You couldn't hide from it. This howling, screaming sound. Now, most of it burned up as it crashed. Only the metal survived. That's when the tanks went into active duty watching the skies. I'd lost my arm by that point. Those huge hammers, they're deadly, trust me. I got special treatment. Despite protesting, everyone remembered my uncle and they remembered me being at his side from when I was a newborn. That's what most people's quiet rebellion was, I think. Remembering him. We're all huddled in our quarters, which doubled up as a waste storage area when the bombing started. Just out of nowhere, these black ships burning the night sky, we could see it through the rafters. There wasn't much we could do but pull our rat-eaten blankets over our heads. The explosions got worse, heavier, more frequent. We were locked in under guard. Renegade guardsmen kept their weapons trained on us, smirking, waiting for a reason. Scum, all of them. I'm glad they're gone now. Anyway, they had landed on the opposite side of the world after engaging in void warfare against the Iron Warriors and their allies. The Raven Guard and the Lamenters worked together. They brought hundreds of tanks and who knows how many Astra Militarum. The land war took months, grueling, brutal long-range combat. The Lamenters, they took the brunt, acted as a distraction while the Raven Guard did what they do best. They would sabotage everything they could. And trust me here, nothing makes an Iron Warrior angrier than losing an entire power grid at the same time as losing an entire fleet of heavy haulers. That was the same week that Forge Fiend got turned into melting slag by a super heavy plasma shot from the Titan Fair Sister. I laughed. That cost me 4 teeth. Worth it. I hope that demon fiend thing suffered. It deserved it. Valthrax locked the city down after that, raised steel walls 20 feet high, and laid out his declaration. If the loyal Astartes killed their fellows, they would be accepted as valuable sacrifices to the gods. The Lamenters' captains sent a hive-wide cast back of themselves demanding the city be surrendered. The sacrifices started after that. 10 people a day at random. That's how I lost Chase and Drex, Marcy and Ilisain. I wasn't worth it. A one-armed no one. Not worth sacrificing. Funny. 6 months of sabotage and bombings and targeted orbital strikes caused Valthryx to snap. He demanded the Iron Warriors honour the gods in combat by slaying these interlopers. So they locked us in and charged out. A lot of Lamenters fell. So did a lot of the Raven Guard. But Valthryx, he was the first to fall, hit in the face by a super heavy cannon that must have been blessed. I don't know how it works. The sorcerers, they tried their best, but the Raven Guard seemed to actively seek them out. I remember watching as they pulled one word bearer limb from limb while screaming bloody murder after someone called Lorgar. Funny. They took the city. The guard rolled in alongside the Lamenters. We had been chained together, and that smirking renegade was taken out with pipes by a horde of my friends. Good work. The doors, they were rigged to blow, and the Raven Guard sorted that out, thankfully. We emerged into our city to find it levelled, nothing but rubble and blood and smoke and fire. The city I'd grown up in was gone, but I suppose it had been from the moment Sarek stepped over those front gates. The Lamenters took their time breaking the chains, and the apothecaries took their time treating our wounds too. There were a lot of badly healed broken bones, old burns and cuts, whip scars. I don't know why they took the time, but they did. The Raven Guard, they took great personal pleasure in offering us trophies from the traitors. I didn't want anything, I had enough reminders. I chose to leave with the Lamenters. I don't know where everyone else went, but I know a lot followed me, still thinking I was my uncle in some way. So we live on their ship, Lionheart, and we go where they go. I was asked by everyone who survived the Hive to be a sort of middle ground, and I ended up a de facto leader anyway. I try my best to remember the things my uncle told me in those small hours, in the quiet moments, and the Lamenters, they talk the exact way he did. It's like he's with us, just 9 feet tall and clad in yellow, wearing his heart on his shoulder instead of his sleeve. I told a lie earlier. I did keep one thing. I kept the neck ring the Iron Warriors made us wear. I kept them, and they hang around my room and remind me. They remind me every day of what the Ravens and Hearts did for me and my people, what few of us remain. I heard recently that the world was destroyed due to overwhelming corruption. I'm glad there wasn't my world anymore. It was gone the second they broke through the Lorgus jump gate. It was gone when we broke the flotillas down, when the oceans died and vanished. It was a rock, broken by malice and cowardice. One of the Lamenter's captains replayed a message they'd received while in warp. It was Celia's message, giving coordinates, locations, numbers and so many other details. They had heard it and formed an attack force with the Ravens and the Guard. The Iron Warriors and their bottom-feeding wretches, they never offer you anything, and we all still recoil when somebody holds a hand out suddenly, but the guardsmen who travel with us offered us a patch that bears the checkers and the heart. We'll never wear chains again, but we're okay wearing hearts, because, well, we do lament. How can we not? This is Audio Log 15. My name is Warren Barnsley, survivor of Hive Gallant.